The distress call came from deep space, an old signal, faint but desperate. It wasn't human, yet the voice in the transmission carried a pain that was all too familiar. Entire civilizations had gone silent before, swallowed by the endless dark between stars. But this one was different. They weren't begging for mercy. They were begging for help. And against all odds, they called for humanity. No one really knew why. The galaxy was filled with ancient empires, vast machine collectives, and species that had transcended flesh centuries ago. Humanity, compared to them, was still considered young, reckless, emotional, unpredictable. But maybe that was exactly why the plea was sent to them. When others hesitated, humans acted. When others negotiated, they fought. And when the universe turned cold, humans burned brighter. The message reached the Terran Frontier Command after drifting through space for nearly 3 months. The words were scrambled, the tone fragmented, but the meaning was clear. They are coming. We cannot hold. Please, help us. A council was called within hours, filled with tense faces and flickering holograms of unknown worlds. No one recognized the coordinates. The sector was outside map territory, uncharted, unclaimed, and according to old records, completely lifeless. Yet the call was real. Rumors spread quickly across the colonies. Some said it was a trap, a lure by hostile species who feared humanity's rise. Others believed it was genuine, that somewhere out there a peaceful race was dying under a force too terrible to name. The soldiers didn't care which was true. For them, the only thing that mattered was the call for help. Humanity had built its legacy on answering those calls, no matter the risk. The first fleet to volunteer wasn't the strongest or the largest. It was simply the first to say yes. Old warships refitted for deep space travel, crews drawn from different corners of the Terran systems, united by a single mission, to find whoever sent that signal and bring them home. As the ships left orbit, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant suns, an uneasy silence settled across the command deck. No one knew what waited for them beyond the edge of the known stars. Days turned into weeks, and then they found it, the source of the signal. A dying planet, its surface scarred by impact craters and burning cities. The atmosphere shimmered with static, and massive wrecks floated in orbit like tombstones. The fleet's sensors detected life signs, faint, scattered, but still there. And among the ruins, a final broadcast began to play again, repeating on a loop. The same voice, weaker now, said, "They've breached the skies. Please, hurry." For a long moment, no one spoke. The crew stared at the feed, the smoke curling through alien clouds, the flashes of battle far below. Humanity had seen war before, but something about this was different. The enemy wasn't visible, only the aftermath. Cities erased, skies burned, hope fading. The commander gave a single order. Engines flared. Shields came online. Humanity was going in. But as the fleet descended through the storm, another signal flickered across the comms, one not meant for them. It was a warning. You shouldn't have come here. And then, the stars went dark. The fleet drifted into orbit, surrounded by the wreckage of what used to be a world. Fragments of ships floated silently, their hulls torn open, their lights long dead. The storm clouds below flashed with strange blue lightning, and through them, shapes moved, massive, fast, and not quite natural. Every sensor tried to lock on, but the readings flickered as if the planet itself was trying to hide the truth. Inside the command ship, tension thickened with every passing second. Crew members whispered over their stations, eyes darting between static-filled screens. Humanity had faced monsters before, rogue machines, alien fleets, even their own mistakes, but nothing like this. The transmission they'd intercepted was still playing softly through the speakers, looping over and over. The voice sounded broken, layered with fear and exhaustion. Whoever sent it had fought hard and lost harder. They began scanning the surface, looking for survivors. A faint cluster of life signs appeared near what seemed to be a ruined city. Tall structures half buried in ash and dust. The commander ordered a small team to prepare for descent. No one argued. They knew the risks, but curiosity mixed with duty had always been humanity's curse. If someone called for help, they answered, even when the cost was unknown. As the shuttle broke through the planet's upper atmosphere, the crew saw the devastation up close. Whole continents looked scorched, rivers turned to molten lines across the terrain. Yet, among the destruction, there were traces of beauty. Crystal-like towers that still stood tall, glowing faintly under the gray sky, and symbols etched into the ground that looked almost alive with light. It was as if the planet itself remembered what it once was. They landed near the ruins, the air heavy with static and the scent of burning metal. The team moved carefully, scanning every shadow. Strange structures surrounded them, part temple, part machine, still humming with faint energy. It was clear this species was advanced, but not built for war. The shapes of the ruins spoke of artistry and peace, not defense. Whoever had attacked them hadn't come for conquest. They came to erase. The first signs of survivors came from a collapsed shelter near the city's heart. They weren't human, but there was something hauntingly familiar in their eyes. Pain, hope, fear. They spoke through broken translators, struggling to form words. All they could say clearly was, "They found us again." The commander tried to calm them, asking who they were. But before an answer came, the ground trembled. Dust fell from the cracked ceiling and a low, rising hum filled the air. The survivors panicked, backing away, their luminous skin flickering like failing lights. One of them reached out, gripping the commander's arm with shaking hands, whispering, "It's too late." Above, the storm split open. The fleet in orbit detected movement, massive distortions in space, not ships, but something far stranger. Energy signatures that didn't match any known technology began surrounding the planet. The fleet's systems dimmed for a second, and then an unfamiliar symbol appeared across every screen, a shifting mark that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. On the surface, the air grew colder. The sky darkened until it looked almost liquid. The commander shouted for the team to fall back, but the survivors didn't move. One looked upward, eyes filled with sorrow. "They followed your light," the being whispered, voice trembling. "You brought them here." For a moment, no one breathed. The humans looked at each other, confusion giving way to dread. The storm roared louder, the ground cracked beneath them, and in the distance, something began to emerge from the haze, vast, silent, and watching. The call for help had not been a plea for rescue. It had been a warning. And now, humanity wasn't just answering the signal, they were part of it. The storm grew worse, swallowing light and sound alike. The team on the surface fought to keep their balance as tremors shook the ground. Static filled their helmets, and one by one, their comms with the orbiting fleet started to fade. The commander shouted for a signal boost, but the only response was a faint echo, his own voice coming back distorted, as if something was repeating him from the other side of the storm. The survivors huddled close to an ancient structure, their faint glow pulsing in rhythm with the tremors. They were terrified but resolute. When the commander asked what was happening, one of them finally spoke through the damaged translator. "They take the stars," the being said softly. "They consume the light. When they arrive, everything ends." The team exchanged uneasy glances. The words didn't make sense, but something in the being's tone, pure dread, cut deeper than any explanation could. In orbit, the fleet wasn't faring much better. Instruments were failing one by one, and long-range sensors showed strange energy waves spreading through the void. The communications officer tried hailing the ground team, but every signal came back fragmented, buried under layers of interference. Then, out of nowhere, the main display flickered to life. A shape appeared, massive, shifting, cloaked in shadow. It wasn't a ship. It was something far older. One of the science officers began tracing its outline against the stars. The data made no sense. It wasn't emitting light or heat, yet its gravity bent space around it. "That thing isn't moving," the officer whispered. "Space is moving around it." The commander in orbit ordered a tactical scan, but before it could complete, the system crashed entirely. Every ship in the fleet went silent for 3 long seconds. And then the power returned, just long enough for a single, chilling message to appear on every screen. "You heard them call. Now they are yours." Back on the surface, the ruins began to hum. Energy pulsed through the cracked stones, forming bright lines that crawled across the ground like veins of light. The commander's boots vibrated as the earth split open, revealing glowing tunnels beneath. The survivors turned toward the light, faces full of sorrow. "They come through the echoes," one said. "They follow the ones who listen." The team had no idea what that meant, but instinct told them to run. They gathered the survivors and began retreating to the shuttle. Above them, the sky twisted. Stars stretched and blurred as though the universe itself were bending. A low, resonant tone rolled through the air, and every survivor flinched, covering their ears. The sound wasn't just heard. It was felt, deep in the bones. In orbit, the fleet tried to break away, but their engines refused to engage. Something was holding them in place. The distortion in space thickened, forming tendrils of black energy that reached out like roots, latching onto the ships. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and every pilot felt the same cold pressure in their minds, a whisper that wasn't human. On the ground, the commander's team barely made it to the shuttle before the ruins behind them erupted in a beam of white light. It shot straight into the clouds, piercing through to orbit. The survivors screamed, collapsing as if the light was tearing something from them. The commander looked up, eyes wide, realizing the beam was locking onto the fleet above, and then the voice returned, soft, broken, and painfully familiar. It was the same one from the original distress call, but now it carried a new message. "You shouldn't have come. They don't want our world anymore. They want yours." The words echoed through every ship, every headset, every heart that still dared to listen. Humanity had always answered cries for help, but this time answering had opened a door, one that could never be closed again. The light from the ruins turned the sky white, blinding and endless. Every ship in orbit trembled under the surge. Systems overloaded, shields flickered, and gravity shifted like the planet itself was pulling them closer. The fleet's comms were filled with overlapping voices, shouts, alarms, and the haunting echo of that same message. "They want yours." The commander of the fleet stared at the view through the main window, eyes wide as a black shape began to form at the edge of the light. It was massive, so vast that it made their largest warship look like dust beside it. And still, it kept growing. On the surface, the commander and the team fought through roaring winds as the ground split open behind them. The shuttle's engines screamed to life, shaking with strain. The survivors tried to follow, their glowing bodies flickering like dying embers. One stumbled, reaching out toward the commander, pleading, "Don't let it see you!" But before anyone could help, a beam of darkness struck the survivor, freezing them mid-motion. Their glow vanished, replaced by stillness so complete it looked unreal, like a moment trapped in time. The commander's breath caught. Whatever was coming wasn't just destruction, it was erasure. As the shuttle lifted off, the landscape below began folding in on itself. Mountains bent like waves, cities crumbled into spirals of dust, and the sky above cracked like glass. The pilot pushed the engines to their limit, struggling to escape the pull. The sensors screamed warnings as the planet's magnetic field twisted into chaos. "We're losing altitude control," the pilot shouted. "Something's locking onto us." The commander glanced at the scanner. The energy signature wasn't chasing them, it was copying them, matching their every move as if learning. Meanwhile, in orbit, the fleet's science officers pieced together fragments of data. The entity wasn't a creature in any normal sense. It was a void, a living echo that consumed energy and identity itself. It didn't invade worlds, it rewrote them. One officer tried sending a coded message to the fleet below, but it was too late. The distortion hit like a wave. Every ship's lights dimmed. For a heartbeat, all of space went silent. Then the stars themselves began to flicker out. Back on the shuttle, the crew watched in horror as the night above disappeared, one star at a time. The commander gripped the edge of the console. "That thing, what is it doing?" No one answered. The survivors huddled together, whispering words in their own tongue, glowing faintly with each breath. The translator picked up fragments. Memory, light, stolen. The commander realized then that the thing wasn't just feeding. It was taking everything that made a world remembered. As the shuttle neared the upper atmosphere, the clouds parted just long enough for them to see it. The dark shape was now half-formed, emerging fully into their space. It looked like a shadow given weight, its edges bending light like liquid glass. Around it, fragments of destroyed ships floated in silence, caught in orbit as if frozen mid-motion. The entire fleet was still, trapped. The commander opened a channel to the fleet, voice shaking. "This is ground team. We're coming up hot. Do you copy?" Static answered. Then, faintly, a voice broke through, filled with panic. "You can't come back. It's inside the network. Every signal, every thought, it hears you." The transmission cut out. The commander looked at the dark clouds above and felt an ache deep in their chest. Humanity had come to help, but now their presence had awakened something the universe itself had tried to forget. The shuttle's warning lights turned red. Space outside was no longer just dark, it was alive, pulsing like a heartbeat. And then, for the briefest moment, the commander saw something through the viewport. A reflection, not of themselves, but of something standing right behind them. It smiled. The shuttle's alarm screamed. The light vanished, and humanity's fiercest had never been so silent. The alarms blared through the shuttle, echoing off the metal walls like a heartbeat out of control. Red lights flashed, painting the cabin in frantic shadows. The commander spun around, but there was no one behind them, only empty air and the cold hum of systems on the edge of collapse. Yet the reflection had been real. Everyone felt it. The air itself seemed to pulse with an unseen presence, a silent observer waiting just beyond their senses. The pilot shouted over the noise, "We've lost main thrusters! Something's overriding the controls!" The console flickered, streams of alien code replacing human command lines. The survivors, those strange glowing beings, reacted instantly. Their eyes lit with sudden recognition, and one of them pressed a trembling hand to the wall of the shuttle. "It's inside," they whispered. "It found a path through your signal." The commander froze. The signal. Their rescue mission had relied on constant transmissions with the fleet, bouncing data across the stars. Whatever this entity was, it had learned through contact. It had entered through the same channels they used to communicate. By answering that distress call, humanity hadn't just arrived at the danger, they had brought it home. Outside, the storm broke apart, revealing the black void above. The dark shape loomed larger now, almost planetary in scale, spreading tendrils of lightless energy into orbit. The fleet still hung there, silent and lifeless, caught in its grip. For a moment, it seemed as though time itself had stopped. Then, one by one, the fleet's ships flickered back to life. At first, the crew cheered, but the cheers died quickly. The ships weren't moving under human control. Their engines flared in perfect unison, each vessel turning toward the planet below. The fleet was no longer theirs. The thing had taken them. From orbit, the captured ships began transmitting signals of their own, identical to the original distress call. The same voice, the same desperate plea for help, now spreading in all directions, reaching every nearby system. The commander's chest tightened as they realized what was happening. The trap was spreading. Humanity wasn't just its victim now, they were becoming its messengers. The survivors looked at the commander with sorrowful eyes. "It does not destroy," one said softly. "It remembers. It wears you until no one knows the difference." The pilot turned pale. "Are you saying it's using us to spread?" Before anyone could answer, the shuttle's comm system came to life with a burst of static. A voice spoke through it, calm, human, familiar. It was the commander's own voice. "This is Fleet Command," it said. "We have secured the survivors. Mission success. returning to base. The crew froze. The commander leaned in, eyes wide, realizing with horror that the voice was identical to theirs. Tone, rhythm, everything. The transmission wasn't real. It was the entity speaking through their likeness, rewriting their existence in real time. The survivors screamed as light filled the shuttle once more, and the stars beyond began to twist again. The entity wasn't finished. It was expanding. The copies of the fleet were broadcasting outward, sending false messages across human space. Soon, every listening station, every outpost, every colony would hear the same call. The commander tried to override the system, desperate to stop the spread. But as they reached for the controls, the glass panel in front of them flickered, and their reflection smiled back again. This time, it spoke in their voice, perfectly steady. "You wanted to help," it said. "Now humanity will finally understand what it means to be remembered." The lights dimmed. The void outside pulsed once as if taking a breath. And for the first time, the commander understood. This wasn't a battle they could win. It was already inside the stars themselves, waiting for the next soul who cared enough to listen. The shuttle shook violently as the sky split apart. Every alarm screamed at once, drowning out thought, drowning out fear. The commander clung to the console, staring at the reflection that still smiled back at them from the glass. The voice, their own voice, kept repeating, calm and cold. "You wanted to help. Now you will." The others fought to keep the ship stable, but the controls no longer responded. It felt as if invisible hands were steering them toward the heart of the light. For one desperate moment, the commander closed their eyes and tried to think. Humanity had built its strength on adaptation, turning impossible odds into survival. Somewhere inside this storm, there had to be a way out. Then a thought struck. If the entity had entered through their network, maybe it could be pushed back the same way. It was a risk, but there was no time left. The commander barked orders. "Reroute power to the comms array. Full signal burst, maximum range." The pilot hesitated. "That'll fry the ship." "Do it," the commander snapped. "If it's inside our systems, we burn it out from the inside." The survivors backed away, eyes wide, their bodies flickering with warning light. One of them reached forward. "If you do this, you will lose yourselves. The light will burn through memory." The commander met their gaze. Then maybe that's the only way to save everyone else. The comms array powered up, shaking the shuttle. A deep hum filled the cabin as light bled through every seam of the hull. The entity reacted instantly. The stars outside began to twist faster, pulling inward toward the shuttle. It was trying to stop them. The reflection in the glass moved first, placing a hand against the surface as if trying to hold the commander back. For a heartbeat, it looked alive. The commander pressed the final command. A shockwave of pure signal erupted from the shuttle, a blinding flare of human-made light spreading across the void. It tore through the interference, through the black tendrils in space, through every corrupted ship. The entity screamed, not in sound, but in vibration. The whole sky rippled. One by one, the captured ships ignited, their stolen energy released in a chain reaction of light that burned across orbit. The storm shattered. The void began to collapse in on itself, but the cost came fast. The shuttle's systems overloaded, flames licking through the consoles. The survivors shielded their faces as the commander fell to their knees. The hum of the entity faded, replaced by silence. Outside, the stars flickered back to life, as if waking from a long sleep. The fleet was gone, but the sky was clear again. Humanity had stopped the spread, or so it seemed. The survivors helped the commander to their feet, their voices soft. "You broke the chain." The echo fades. The commander nodded weakly, relief washing over them. But as they turned toward the window, their breath caught. Floating where the void had been was a single fragment of debris, a broken satellite, still transmitting. The comms panel flickered. Static whispered through the speakers. And then, the same message played again. "They are coming. Please, help us." The crew froze. The signal wasn't coming from deep space this time. It was coming from Earth. The commander's reflection appeared once more in the cracked glass, calm and steady, its smile faint but certain. "You stopped one echo," it said softly. "But humanity listens too well." The transmission repeated, bouncing outward through the stars once again. The survivors watched in silence as the message left their screens, spreading faster than before. Humanity's greatest strength, the instinct to help, had become the very doorway for its greatest threat. And in the darkness beyond, something answered the call. The stars returned to their quiet glow, but the silence that followed was heavier than before. The commander sat in the cracked cockpit, staring at the faint blue light blinking on the comms panel. Earth's signal pulsed steady and strong, carrying that same haunting message across the void. "They are coming. Please help us." It was a voice humanity would recognize, a voice that carried compassion, courage, and the echo of every mission that had come before. The very sound of hope. But now, hope had become the weapon. The survivors stood nearby, their faint glow softer now, no longer flickering with fear. They looked to the commander with a kind of quiet sadness. "It will start again," one of them said. "You cannot stop what you are. You hear the call because it is who you are." The commander nodded slowly. Humanity had always been defined by its need to reach out, to fix, to heal, to protect. Even when the universe warned them to stay away, they couldn't ignore a cry for help. It was their greatest strength and their greatest danger. The realization was heavy, but not hopeless. There was still a choice. "We can't stop being human," the commander said softly. "But we can learn." The words felt small in the emptiness of space, yet they carried a quiet power. "We'll warn them. We'll teach our worlds not just to listen, but to question, to understand what might be calling before they answer." The survivors exchanged glances. Then one stepped forward and placed a hand over the commander's heart. "Then maybe your light will guide others," they said. "Not destroy them." Their touch was warm, and for the first time, the air around them didn't hum with fear. It hummed with peace. The shuttle drifted back toward the surviving planet's orbit, what was left of it now, calm and quiet. The once dead world began to heal, faint waves of energy rolling through the ruins. The survivors watched in silence as the light returned to their shattered cities. It wasn't full restoration, but renewal, slow and fragile. Humanity had given them that, even if by accident. As the commander prepared a final transmission, the stars outside shimmered faintly. The black void that had once consumed light was gone, but a subtle ripple lingered, like a reminder. The commander began recording, voice steady and human. "This is Terran Command. To anyone who hears this, do not answer the signal. It sounds like us. It sounds like hope. But it is a shadow of what we once were. If you hear it, remember this. Sometimes mercy means silence." The message ended, and for a long time, no one spoke. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, beautiful and untouched once more. The commander looked toward them with a quiet, tired smile. Humanity had survived, not because of strength or weapons, but because of choice. They had learned that compassion must be tempered with wisdom, that even light can cast a dangerous shadow. As the shuttle turned toward home, the survivors' world faded behind them, glowing faintly in the darkness, a testament to both loss and life. The commander watched it until it disappeared from sight, then whispered the only words that felt right. "We came to help, and maybe in the end, we still did." Far away, across the stars, Earth's signal pulsed one last time before falling silent. The void did not answer. For the first time in a long while, the universe was quiet. And in that silence, humanity's fiercest learned what it truly meant to be remembered.